Recitations.
Hip, hip, hurrah, tally-ho.
Hey, baby doll.
Hey, Puddin'.
Boy, we had a great time watching this episode. It's an incredible episode from the classic era. It's one of my top episodes for a lot of reasons. And we watched it with a group of friends, and they felt that way too. That there was a lot we could get out of this besides just the general story as far as character development in other areas. So let's tune in to what it was like when we watched it with our friends and what their comments were. Okay, I'm Nayar, and we just finished watching What Our Little Girl's Made Of. A couple things after this viewing. Well, we watched it on large format screen, an 80-inch screen. The colors are so vivid. There are certain episodes that you realize that when the show came out, they wanted it to be very colorful because of color TVs were the thing. And the lighting on the caverns, the backgrounds, there was more color than ever in this episode. And that's one of the highlights that I'm walking away from it, that I don't think I've noticed it so much in the past.
Well, this is Dark Soul here. Interesting. I think the one part that really stuck with me was the big pink penis that showed up in the cavern. And then Kirk said no means no to Lurch. And you would have had to have seen the show to understand what I just said.
This is Kavora. And so like Nayar said, we're watching it on a big screen, and this is the remastered version. So it was crystal clear, and it was very noticeable, the space shot scenes. I mean, you could tell if you're used to watching the original on TV in the 70s, you know this is different. You know, they use different shots there. The episode was good. I liked how everything came together. It was a good lesson on humanity, what it means to be human, and how the androids treated people. They didn't seem to care as much about life or ethics. And this was a good Nurse Chapel episode. This is the
Yes, I agree.
The only time she really had a standout part in this show. I mean, other times she'll have a few lines, and she's Gene Roddenberry's wife, so at least she got this one episode that she was prominent in.
I'm Derek. I first watched this episode in 1984 when it was being rerun on my 10-inch black and white TV, and I echo what the others have said. Just to watch this in such vivid color, such great clarity, it's wonderful that they've been able to do these with these old episodes and save them. I'll admit that so many episodes of Doctor Who from the 60s have gone erased, and I'm so glad that they kept all the Star Trek episodes and never used the tapes. I have to say, as an Addams Family fan growing up, it's interesting to see Ted Cassidy in other roles. And I guess in a way he was kind of the wisest of them all, of all the androids, having been, who knows how many millennium ago he was supposed to have been initially created, and just spend all that time alone until the doctor found him. As a fan of Falcon Crest growing up, one of the guys, Harry Bosch, the actor kind of looked familiar, and I had to go check, and he played the character on Falcon Crest for many episodes, where his daughter fell in love with a local hothead, and of course, as a father, he was very upset about, and he and that young man had a lot of fights, so it was fun to see him, Harry Bosch, in the Star Trek episode as the kind of assistant doctor. But a great episode, glad to have seen it, and I echo that it really gave Majel Barrett some room to work with. I remember she was a pretty straight shooter at Star Trek conventions when she was alive, and they would ask her, how'd you get all these roles on Star Trek and so forth? And she's just like, I was sleeping with the boss. And I always loved her frankness. She was a first-class lady.
I have to agree that this, if we were to say there's one episode that highlights Christine Chapel more than any others, this is it. And I never really thought of it so much as a Christine Chapel episode, but they allowed her so much leeway in here, and I love her acting. She didn't overact at all, because we see throughout Star Trek, the original series, there are instances of over the top, but when the android revealed that it wasn't the real Kirk that she was speaking to during dinner time, her reaction was so natural. And I think it's great that she was able to pick up a different role during Next Generation. And so she's so talented as an actress. And obviously all the things that she did behind the scenes for Star Trek, we wouldn't have it to the level that we do today, because she was very involved in the merchandising during that era as well.
Majel was excellent in this, and you're right, she didn't overact. She actually did a good job, and it's amazing because I liked her as number one when she played number one in the first pilot, and there was talk that that the network didn't like having a female second in command, but then there was another theory that they just didn't like her acting in it. But I kind of think, I always thought she was a good actress. I mean, she was great in this, and as Loxana Troy, she was great. Another thought about this, too, the interaction of Kirk with Andrea and kissing her and everything, this was really the first episode where they kind of hinted that Kirk would be a ladies' man. But before, it never happened before, the way he acted with women, even a few episodes ago with Mudd's Women, when there was the one woman that seemed interested in him, and he was not interested in her at all, and he let her know. So this is the first hint that we get that maybe Kirk will start becoming, I don't know, like having that reputation of being a ladies' man.
All right, what did everybody think about Nurse Chapel's reaction to her fiance potentially having a relationship with, she didn't know it at the time, but an android?
I may have said it out loud when we watched that scene, if looks could kill. But that's a sign of a great actress. She didn't verbalize it, but boy, with her eyes, said everything. So that's my thought.
Yeah, she was very, very expressive with her nonverbal acting. I've been acting now for probably about 5 years, and that's something that's really hard to do, is to be the role without saying a word.
I think many of us have been to Star Trek conventions, and I got to meet Majel Barrett and got her autograph in 2006. And she came one more time in 2008 and passed away after that. This was the big Star Trek convention they do annually in Las Vegas. And the Creation Entertainment has very strict rules about how stars are allowed to interact with fans, and you can't just get a picture made with somebody. You're supposed to get professional photo op. And so a lot of the stars, they would just explain that, I'm sorry, I can't take my picture with you. But when Majel Barrett was signed autographs, if a fan wanted an autograph, a picture with her, I remember she just waved me over to her side of the table and said, come on, let's do it. Oh, cool. And just didn't charge me the money. I really appreciated that. But I guess, she was kind of the mother of Star Trek, and so she could get by with not following all the little rules they have at the convention. Yeah. But I say that about Creation. They do a great job. I've been to 5 of their conventions for Star Trek, and they get all these stars out of the woodwork that might not normally come to conventions to give fans a chance to see them. One lady said for years they pestered me, and finally one of their executives came to my front door and in person just to try to plead with me to come to Star Trek convention, how much everybody would like to meet me. So I pick on them sometimes, but at the same time, they've done a lot of great for the world of Star Trek and the other genres that they do conventions for.
Okay, before we go into our commentary, let's open up Alan Asherman's The Star Trek Compendium and see what his commentary is.
What Are Little Girls Made Of? The writer is Robert Bloch, director James Goldstone. Stardate 2712.4. The Enterprise arrives at planet Exo 3 to learn the fate of Dr. Roger Corby, the pasteur of archaeological medicine. On board is Nurse Christine Chapel, Corby's fiancée, who has given up a bioresearch career on Earth to find him. Corby contacts the Enterprise and confirms that he is living in underground caverns he discovered while suffering from severe frostbite 5 years before. At his request, only Kirk and Christine beam down. The Doctor shows them ancient machines left behind by the long-dead Exoites, the Old Ones, which Corby used to create his aides, Dr. Brown and young Andrea, now revealed as androids. Corby fashions an android duplicate of Kirk, intending to capture the Enterprise and seed the universe with androids. But Kirk plants false memories in his duplicate's brain, and Spock realizes something is wrong. Kirk then turns the androids against Corby, who, now aware that his own android body has made him more machine than man, embraces Andrea and fires a stolen phaser between them, killing them both. Spock arrives with a landing party moments later. Nurse Chapel announces that she is staying with the Enterprise crew.
Okay, what were some of your memories watching this as a young girl and comparing it to what you see as an adult?
I mean, as a young girl, the most obvious thing is like, oh, Kirk is naked. And there's
and you love that. Anything with bare-chested Kirk, you love. So that hasn't changed.
Oh, yeah, I still like that, yeah. I do like the story because, when you get older, then you realize that it's about, wanting an android body, like some of the other Star Trek episodes, wanting to be immortal. Mm-hmm. But the androids are really not perfect when you think about it deep down. They're really not like humans.
Mm-hmm. I remember watching it as a kid and immediately noticing, hey, that's Lurch.
Oh, you recognize?
Because I love the Addams Family. Oh, I loved all those black and white shows. Addams Family, Munsters, of course. And he kind of, because of his stature,
and his voice,
he's kind of typecast. He's never going to have a quote-unquote normal part. He's going to play some sort of creature or someone on the outside. I thought the casting was perfect for Ruck. But that's why I remember immediately the idea of a body double. They did a wonderful job with it. I thought the special effects were great. It was one of the times, there were a couple shows that did things like that, and my mother would explain to me how it's done using the film cells. Because obviously they didn't have CGI back then, but they had to layer the film cells. Great job of it back in 1966.
The way they had the two Kirks, and you can see them side by side.
Mm-hmm. The writing on it, excellent episode, written, you mentioned, by Robert Bloch. What he's most known for is he wrote Psycho. So the book Psycho, which the movie was based on. I mean, how awesome is... This is what we talk about when Star Trek used to get writers who were familiar with the sci-fi, fantasy, horror genre, and they drew from that talent.
And Gene Roddenberry was excited, too, to get Robert Bloch, just because he was already a known writer at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, it actually turned out that Gene and the other staff were not really as impressed with this script as they thought it would be, but they still wanted to be able to credit Robert Bloch with it, so they did rewrites. They asked him to do a few rewrites and made it work, but they weren't really as impressed.
Gene was always reworking scripts. I mean, that's one of the...
That's true, yeah.
It's almost a running joke, but it wasn't really a joke because writers were frustrated with him because he would rewrite certain things that they wanted.
Yes, we've always heard that, yes.
Robert Bloch was a protege of H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, you want to talk about someone who has some pedigree with regards to his training. That's awesome. Fan favorite amongst many people. He won a Hugo Award, Bram Stoker Award, World Fantasy Award. He served the term as the Mystery Writers of America and was a member of the Science Fiction Writers of America. This guy was a heavy hitter.
And he actually was asked to come back. He did write, 2 more episodes of the original series.
That's right. He had this obsession with his literary works with Jack the Ripper. And he was known for writing different viewpoints and stories about Jack the Ripper. And he ended up working that into the Star Trek universe, as we'll find out later on.
He did, yes, in Wolf in the Fold.
That's right. And another thing that we have to give credit to with this episode, the classic Saturday Night Live skit where Kirk tells fans to get a life. One of the questions was based on this episode because they want to know the combination to Kirk's safe. So
Okay.
this is it. If you've ever seen that classic Saturday Night Live skit, this is where we see Kirk safe.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So you see them punching the combination.
And if you're wondering what the combination is, what do you need to do?
Get a life. The android Andrea, and of course another thing you notice when you're young is like her costume, like
Gravity-defying costume.
yeah,
Because they
yeah.
actually used tape to pull her breasts up.
They did have to to tape the costume to her skin.
That's right, and they actually had someone on the set. I remember reading in one of the Star Trek books about how they had someone on the set to monitor to make sure that from all angles that there wasn't side cleavage showing because they couldn't, the censors wouldn't allow that.
Right.
Another classic Bill Tice outfit. Beautiful design.
Yeah, and the way he could work the design in because Brown and Corby wore a similar design.
Yes. So it was thematic to everyone down in those caves.
And it was just interesting to see the way the androids worked. I mean, they served a different purpose because Ruck had the purpose of being like the bodyguard. Andrea was probably created for the men, basically, and then Brown, he was still there to be Dr. Corby's assistant.
Yeah. Set design. One of the things I love about TOS is that the lighting that they used in the corridors, and they did something similar here. They put lighting in the caves, so it had very unique hues. It just wasn't dark caves that we would expect normally.
I mean, yeah, realistically, there wouldn't be light there, but I think they didn't want to have the actors have to hold a lamp or something, so just have the caves
and
brilliant
have a
light.
colors.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, it was great. What do you think about the makeup design on Ruck and his look?
It was great. I mean, because the thing is, he looked more like an android, and the other androids looked more human, and that must have been intentional. I think we're supposed to think that Ruck was made, like he said, he was made by the old ones, as they called them. But the other androids must have been made later, probably by Dr. Corby.
Yes.
Star Trek Trivia. Question number 1. Dr. Corby revolutionized immunization techniques after translating medical records from the ruins on what planet? Question number 2. Numbering the 5 buttons from left to right, what are the last 6 numbers in the combination to Kirk's safe?
One of the things that we all noticed as a group, and this is something I didn't, as a little guy, I didn't pay attention to true characterization. I just wanted to see action. So this was an episode that does have that. It has looks and feels of something that a kid would like. But this was truly Nurse Christine Chapel's time to shine.
It was. This was her episode. And out of the main characters, it was just Kirk and Chapel in this episode. Very, very little of Spock, even though he was in it. But yeah, so it was mostly about Chapel.
And we got a lot of background, which we're always striving to understand more about the side characters. And this was an episode that gave us some understanding of her background. So let's talk about that.
Well, she gave up a career in bioresearch to be a nurse in Starfleet.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah, and just to do that, just to follow a man is kind of like...
I thought that was weird. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it wasn't a boyfriend, it was a fiance.
Well, that is true. It was someone special to her.
But
you're kind of thinking, I mean, they wouldn't really write a woman like that these days. And
yeah,
actually,
the whole thing was kind of strange. If me as a man proposed to you, I'd want to get the ball rolling. I wouldn't want to be separated, right?
Right. So how did they get separated after they were engaged? Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, even though that was not really in the original script. The original script had some other, like a rich woman that hired the Enterprise to find Dr. Corby for some other reason, and then they decided to have Nurse Chapel do the part. Probably just a way to get her back in because she's Gene's wife.
Sure.
But the thing is, Majel Barrett, I mean, she thought Nurse Chapel was a weak character too. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I mean, I'm sure she would have rather played number one, like she did in the pilot. But the nurse was still a good character in this. I mean, the fact that
absolutely.
Yeah, she was still a strong woman in the episode. And she didn't gush too much over Roger Corby. She still, even though he was her fiance, she still wasn't sure about him. You know, when she said, like, all of this proves that it isn't really you, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love the way she played her character.
She you know, maybe doesn't get enough credit. She is a good actress.
She is very good. And for the voice inflections, the looks, everything about it is she was hopeful. You could tell at the beginning of the episode she was very hopeful, but then she was being cautious. She knew something was up.
Yeah, she was kind of. I mean, she even told Kirk, you know, in private, but it turned out to be the duplicate of Kirk. But she was telling him that she still wasn't sure. I mean, she still, you know, like after 5 years, people change, and especially after being stranded on a planet for so long. Yep,
great characterization on her part.
And I still have to say that this, I mean, because watching it now that we're watching Star Trek Picard. I mean, Picard is about androids, and so it makes this episode seem a little more relevant to the Star Trek universe. Mm-hmm. Talking about the androids and how good are they, and will they rise up to kill all the humans?
Interesting way to parallel.
Because I mean, and Ruck killing the 2 security guards, you know, and why did he even need to do that?
Yes, bottomless pit. I did like in Star Trek lore, this is the first time that Captain Kirk's brother, George, is mentioned. George is known as Sam, from Kirk's point of view.
Yes, and they said that George had 3 sons, but then when we actually saw Kirk's brother and wife, and he only had 1 son. Mm-hmm. And so everybody's wondering about that. I mean, there's some conjecture, like maybe the duplicate, maybe his memory actually was flawed when he said 3 sons, and that gave Kirk a clue, like, so he really doesn't know everything. Mm-hmm. Or was it, you know, of course, anything. I mean, maybe his other 2 sons died before we saw him. Yeah, who knows? That hasn't really been put into canon.
Yeah, interesting way to look at that. It's funny we're seeing ties, though. We're talking about Nurse Chapel, who is portrayed by Majel Barrett Roddenberry. So in this episode was Ted Cassidy, who played Lurch. Now, if we look at Next Generation, she ended up playing Luxwana Troy. Totally different character.
Yes.
That shows her acting ability. I love it when actors do totally different characters, which she definitely did. And now we have, do you remember her valet was Mr. Home?
Yes.
Played by Carol Strickland.
Yes.
We've got to see him at a con before. Now, he played Lurch in the Addams Family movies.
That's right.
Now, how funny is that?
Yeah, Star Trek had both of the actors that played Lurch, and they both got to work closely with Majel Barrett.
That's it. That's
awesome.
A wild tie, isn't it?
And Majel did say that playing Luxwana Troy, that character is actually closer to her own personality. They said,
by far.
Like that she wouldn't even have to act.
That's right. Yes. Yep.
Star Trek Trivia. Answers. Number 1. Dr. Corby revolutionized immunization techniques after translating medical records from the ruins on what planet? The answer, Orion. Question number 2. Numbering the 5 buttons from left to right, what are the 6 numbers in the combination to Kirk's safe? Answer, 554334.
And we didn't see Dr. McCoy in this episode at all. It's one of the few episodes that does not contain him.
Right. Because it was mostly just Kirk and Chapel.
Mm-hmm.
And they also, the set was huge and very expensive. This was one of the more expensive episodes too, because they had that large set with all the caverns.
Yeah, which I love. And the part of the cavern where he takes the stalactite and holds it, that's become a very popular meme.
Because it's a phallic symbol? Yeah. and Kirk is thinking like he's going to hit Ruck with it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about Cat's Paw before, or
Yes.
we're talking about other episodes that Robert Bloch wrote, one being Cat's Paw. He does mention in here the old ones. Corby mentioned it. And there was a similar reference in Cat's Paw as well.
Interesting. Okay.
So I
Yeah.
like it when the writers are looking for some sort of connective tissue within their works and keeping it with the Star Trek universe. And it goes back to, the old ones go back to Bloch's mentor, H.P. Lovecraft. That's where he got the reference. So we see some Lovecraftian lore worked into the Star Trek universe.
Putting stuff in. And now the idea of, when Kirk said, mind your own business, Spock, I'm tired of your half-breed
Oh, it's
interference.
terrible. Yes. When he said that, I was like, ouch.
And that was supposed to be Spock's clue that it's not the real Kirk.
Yep.
I just thought that was, that was strange. I don't know. And I mean...
Well,
maybe,
if your best friend said something like that to you, let's say you had dual heritage. I have dual heritage. I'm half Greek, half Irish. And that's something that socially nobody really cares about. But there are some heritages that people feel very strongly about. If you were to say that to someone, it's considered extremely offensive. So that's,
yes, yeah.
So it's bigoted. So that's one of the things that Spock would I think everyone on the bridge would have to look and say, what? That's horrible to say that to someone.
So Spock knew that was out of character for Kirk. It still sounds, but he has been called a half-breed on Star Trek,
which is
on
horrible.
other
I hate it. Yes, I actually
yeah.
hate it when Dr. McCoy jokingly says things like that, because that's not cool. Like, nobody jokes like that now.
Yeah.
With things that could be potentially harmful to someone, to their character. I did get a kick out of it because you love bare-chested Kirk. This is an episode that they said they had to shave Captain Kirk's chest because Gene Roddenberry didn't think that a Starfleet captain would have a hairy chest.
Yeah, every time
What?
every time Kirk is shirtless, they shaved his chest. But
Okay, so now you being an aficionado of Kirk and Spock's chest, do you agree with that? Do you think it's necessary?
Yeah, probably. I think he probably does look
You've gotten
better
used to it?
with the with the smooth chest. Yeah.
What if I were to shave my chest, though?
You should.
Really?
Really.
Okay, I've never asked you that before, but I was surprised at the response. We mentioned Bones wasn't in it, Scotty wasn't in it, and Sulu wasn't in it. So, which I'm kind of glad that they have some episodes that focus in, not on everyone, but on someone.
I mean, yeah, and if they had the other characters, they wouldn't have done much in this episode. So, yeah, it worked better without them just because of the plot and the way they wanted to focus on Nurse Chapel.
Yes. Now, James Goldstone was the director, and he directed the second pilot, Where No Man Has Gone Before. And the production staff really praised his work because mainly the series went over schedule, unfortunately, because because of the rewrites. So as many people praised him, the producers really looked down upon him because his production schedule went overtime. So we would never get to see him again direct the Star Trek episode. So good for him of dealing with the rewrites, but bad for him because of the way the studio viewed him. Now this title is based on the nursery rhyme, What Are Little Girls Made Of? Now after the night after we watched this episode, we were getting ready for bed, and I said to you, you know what you're made of? You're made up of sugar and spice and everything nice. Because that's what little girls are made of.
Right,
and you
that's
giggled,
the poem.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I said, so what am I made of? So I'm waiting for you to tell me that I'm made of snails and puppy dog tails. But instead, what is your reply?
Romulan.
And I was bewildered. I was like, what do you mean I'm made of Romulan?
And I said, because I like Romulans.
Only from you would I find that to be a positive.
Yeah.
You are so funny.
So the idea of androids, well, of course, as we said, it's going to be explored later on Star Trek. I mean, just on the original series, they had other episodes about androids or building artificial bodies.
Mm-hmm. We really loved watching this episode. Would you say that this continues to fit in with the Star Trek universe?
Yes,
as far
it does.
as working with canon, we haven't revisited anything. We haven't revisited Ruck or any of the other characters or even this planet. So we can't say that it distracts or takes away from canon. But I love the rewatch. How about you?
I do too. It added a little bit to canon about Kirk's brother and knowing why Chapel is there.
Oh, totally. And even she asks Spock something about being engaged, and we're going to find out more about that in season 2.
Yeah, she said,
"Have you ever? A seed.
However, have you ever been engaged?" And he didn't say anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about any other medium that makes reference. Specifically, we look over the material that's found in the James Blish adaptions. So the adaption of this episode is found in Star Trek Volume 11, adapted by James Blish. It's the first story in here. And what I loved about this one, we're noticing that more and more as these volumes were put out, they're closer to the scripts that we see on TV. Because remember, the early ones were based solely on the scripts, and they deviated heavily.
Yeah, and so this one is more, it's more like what happened on the show instead of being like a little different before they made all the script changes.
Exactly. So the story mirrors what we see on television. The only difference that I really noticed is they didn't give us a full description of Ruck. It described him as a bald ape-like creature, and that's about it. I wouldn't call Ruck a bald ape-like creature, or they said a hairless ape-like creature.
Yeah.
So, he could have spent some more time describing Ruck, because if I've never seen the episode, I would view, in my mind's eye, Ruck very differently.
That's true. And other stuff, it still doesn't have the transition of scenes very well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only other thing, but yeah, other than that, it sticks pretty close to the episode.
I did like this volume, Star Trek Episode 11, because the preface actually answers quite a few questions. And it's interesting that he's directing people to the Star Trek Well Committee, which I joined when I was younger because I wanted to connect with other Star Trek fans. So this fandom was alive and well back then. He was aware of it. He was involved with it to a degree as well. He makes mention of some of the letters that he was getting in response to his adaptions, that people wanted him to not only adapt Star Trek, but write some more unique Star Trek material. And like what it says, a number of letters have asked me for another Star Trek novel, like Spock Must Die, and I'd like to try that. It was certainly fun the first time. Also, I have another idea, which I'm keeping a secret until I'm sure both Paramount and Bantam like it. I'm sorry to be so vague, but publishing is like that, a chancy business. I'm not familiar with it. What was the secret that he was keeping? But I didn't read this when it first came out, but looking at it later on, I can't imagine what it was like to get information like this. This is pre-Starlog magazine, too. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
well, he passed. I mean, he died kind of early.
He did.
So, yeah.
He did. He really did. Because you remember the last volume, his wife had to scramble together and got another writer involved as well. Some people are asking if they would put their name in a future book of his, and he says, no, I'm not going to do that, which is really curious that fans were writing James Blish to ask things like that. And he says, finally, I have often been asked what other books I've written besides these. I'm flattered to be asked this, but there are more than 30 others, and I have lost track of some of them myself. So, wow.
Okay.
He's had a great background in writing other books before he was doing the adaptations, but we love reading these adaptations. But there was a spin-off novel by Michael Jan Friedman.
Yes, it was called Double Double.
Mm-hmm.
And you read it? I'm not sure if I read that.
I did. I read it in my teenage years. And now looking back at it, when I think Michael Jan Friedman, I always think Next Generation.
Yes. But he actually wrote
a
TOS
book. Oh, yeah, he did some incredible Next Generation books. But he did a TOS book as well. So, yes, there is a follow-up to this.
And actually, I found out there's another one called Immortal Coil, another novel that was that explores Exo 3 a little bit. It has it's about androids, and then it also talks about the old ones in Exo 3.
I've never read that before.
It's on my list. It's one of the post-Nemesis books.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.